Text 2. Preface to the New Translation by Elie Wiesel. If in my lifetime I was to write only one book, this would be the one. Just as the past remains in the present, all my writings after night, including those that are about religious themes, profoundly maintains its influence and cannot be understood if one has not read this very first of my works. Why did I write it? Did I write it to not go mad, or contrastingly, to go mad? In order to understand the nature of madness, the tremendous, terrifying madness that has erupted in history and in the minds of humans. Was it to leave behind memories, or to help prevent history from repeating itself? Or was it simply to create a record of sadness I endured as a young man, at an age when one's knowledge of death and evil should be limited to what one discovers in literature? There are those who tell me that I survived in order to write this text. I am not convinced. I didn't know how I survived. I was weak, rather shy. I did nothing to save myself. A miracle? Certainly not. If heaven could or would perform a miracle for me, why not for others more deserving than myself? It was nothing more than a chance. However, having survived, I needed to give some meaning to my survival. Looking back, I must confess that I did not know, or no longer knew, what I wanted to achieve with my words. I only knew that without this testimony, my life as a writer, or my life period, would not have become what it is. That of a witness who believes he has a moral obligation to try to prevent the enemy from enjoying one last victory by allowing his crimes to be erased from human memory. The Nazis in Germany tried to build a society in which there simply would be no room for Jews. Toward the end of their power, their goal changed. They decided to leave behind a world in which Jews would seem never to have existed. This is why everywhere in Russia, in the Ukraine, and in Lithuania, the Nazis carried out the final solution by turning their machine guns on more than 1 million Jews, men, women, and children, and throwing them into huge mass graves, dug just moments before by the victims themselves. Special units would then dig up the corpses and burn them. Thus, for the first time in history, Jews were not only killed twice, but denied burial in a cemetery. It is obvious that the war which Hitler started was a war not only against Jewish men, women, and children, but also against the Jewish religion, Jewish culture, Jewish tradition, and therefore Jewish memory. I know that I must bear witness. I also know that, while I had many things to say, I did not have the words to say them. Sadly, aware of my limitations, I watched helplessly as language became an obstacle. It became clear that it would be necessary to invent a new language. Hunger, thirst, fear, transport, selection, fire, chimney. These words all have meaning, but in those times they meant something different. Writing in my native language, I would pause at every sentence and start over and over again. All the dictionary had to offer seemed insufficient. Was there a way to describe the closed cattle cars, the fear, the despair, or the discovery of a terrifying universe where educated men in uniform came to kill, and innocent children and sad old men came to die? Or the separations of entire families, entire communities, or the killing of a beautiful, well-behaved little Jewish girl with golden hair and a sad smile, murdered with her mother the very night of their arrival? How was one to speak to them without weeping with a broken heart? And yet, having lived through this experience, one could not keep silent no matter how difficult, if not impossible, it was to speak. And so I persevered and trusted the silence that is more important than words. Before concluding this introduction, I believe it important to emphasize how strongly I feel that books, just like people, have a destiny. Some invite despair, others happiness, some both. To forget the dead would be like to killing them a second time. Therefore, this witness has forced himself to testify for the young people of today, for the children who will be born tomorrow. He does not want his past to become their future.